Hi everybody. Let's see how many we get live today for our wonderful Watercolour Wednesday. Where are you all? I can't see anyone popping up yet. Oh, here we go. Here we are, 9 of you, quick off the mark. Good to see you along for Watercolour Wednesday. And we're doing our wonderful stag today. Something a bit Christmassy, but a bit not Christmassy. I think, for me anyway, we're already a bit fed up with Christmas. With everything that's going on this year. Afternoon, Deb. Good to have you along today. I'm just going to move that wire out of my way. Hi, Ruth, Suzanne, Deb. Hi, Deb. 2 Debs. No, Deb's messaged twice. Oops. Sorry, I just going to adjust my camera because it suddenly filmed the top of my head. There we go, that's better. Oh dear. Bear with me 1 second, guys. I'll wait for you all to arrive. I'm just going to bring that down so you can see everything. Who else is joined? Hi, Pauline. Wow, lots of messages of love and support. Good to have you all. Sorry if I've missed any names out. Oh, Sabida, hi. Josie. You was overexcited. I can understand that. What's not to get excited about? Okay. More and more will join once they realise I've gone live, I'm sure. We're up to 40 people now. Hi, Kathy. So, I hope you can all hear me. If you can't, I'm sure you would have said by now. I'm working on cold pressed watercolour paper, which I've stuck down to my board. I stretched it with some clean water and dried it back. And that's to stop the paper buckling and warping. Hello, CJ Smith from Scotland. Oh, very appropriate that you're joining from Scotland. And Lorna, Teresa. Hi, Teresa. Sorry, cold pressed watercolour paper, and I've sketched out, hopefully you can just about see him. I do have quite strong lights in my studio, but hopefully you can see the pencil drawing that I have there. What I see on screen's about 10 seconds behind real time. There we go. So there he is sketched out, and we're going to be using a very muted palette of colours. The set that I'm using, this is one that you can buy online from me. This is artist quality watercolour set. If you compare that to normal pans, which look dry and they're not shiny, these are very sticky because they've got gum arabic in them, and the pigment's very intense. So these colours in the middle, which are blues and greens, they're so intense you can't even see the colours until you wet them. So that's what I'm using today. I think they're $7.50 on my website if you want to give them a try. I've got my mixing palette and just 2 brushes today. My size 12 and my size 6 watercolour brush. We're not using any special tools other than tissue paper today, a bit of tissue paper. You could use some masking fluid if you wanted to mask out around his nose, but I'm going to be risky and go without it. But if you wanted to, you could do the highlights on his horn and mask it out with some masking fluid. Okay, but I'm going to go freestyle Watercolour Wednesday. So we're going to start putting in this muted background, this hazy, foggy background, for our lovely stag to sit in. Oh, please also, if you're painting along, have your hair dryer. Hey, Eleanor, your cards arrived. Oh, your paints arrived today. They are amazing quality. There, you see, Eleanor bought some. Okay, Right, I'm going to mix up my colour for the background, okay? And it's kind of yellowy, kind of greeny, sort of fawny colours. So I've got my mixing well here. I'm going to add some water. We want the background to be nice and muted, not too strong. The whole focus of our class and our painting today is our stag. So I'm just dropping some water in my well. Now I don't want to run out of this, so I should get one of those squeezy things, you know, those pipettes. To get a nice puddle of water, I'm going to grab some yellow ochre, pop that into my puddle, fairly rich-ish. I'm going to test the colour out. I always have a scrap of paper. I was playing earlier looking for colours, and that's what I ended up with. Now into that yellow ochre, be careful here, I'm going to add a bit of ultramarine blue. You don't want too much, otherwise you'll end up with a bright green. This should give us a kind of, let me just try this. That's very light, so I'm going to add a bit more colour to my puddle. That's a bit too yellowy, so a little bit more blue just to give it that tinge of sort of kind of a greeny. Whoops, they're very sticky, these paints. They stick to your brush, fly around. There we go, that's the colour I'm looking for. So that's yellow ochre with a bit of blue in it. Let me just see if we can get that on camera. There is a lot of glare on my screen. Hopefully you're all okay. So now you have two options. You can pre-wet the paper and put your wash in, but be warned, if you're going to pre-wet the paper, I'm just going to adjust this camera a bit more because, let me see whether that helps. Hi John, good to have you along. John's my neighbour. Okay, I've just adjusted the camera, so now I've got to adjust it once more, and then I promise we'll get started. There we go. That should be better for you. I'm just going to move him up a little bit. Okay, so as I was saying, you can pre-wet around the outside of your subject, whether it be a stag or anything else, okay? But what will happen if you pre-wet the paper is, remember, your colour is going to be diluted slightly more. Okay, so take that into account when you're doing this. I don't think I've mixed up enough, but you know what, I'm just going to go in. Be careful around, so I'm going to start off coming around the edge of my stag, using the point of my brush to help me come between the horns. Now if you go slightly over him, don't worry at all. Most of his horns are going to be dark, so we can cover those little mistakes over. So I'm just taking that wash, using the point of my brush as I come in behind. Now I need to work fairly fast because I need this paint, I'm just going to make the colour slightly darker, really for camera purposes. Ooh. There we go. And if you have some different changes in colour as well, I just mixed up a little bit more, and you just saw there some of the blue showing through, but that just adds to it. So coming around those horns, this is the trickiest bit. I'm going fast because I want to capture this paint. I need to do something to the paint whilst it's still wet. So coming down. You could, of course, another option is to put masking fluid all over the stag. That would take quite a lot of time to do, and you'd have to be very accurate with your masking fluid. So I find it's better just to come around the outside. Now your watercolour paint doesn't like dry paper, okay, so it's not going to go, I'll move that out of my way, it's not going to go onto the dry paper. So long as you don't put it there, your stag will stay nice and sharp. and just pulling that down. I knew I was going to run out of colour. I said, didn't I? I said, pop that in there. Make sure I've got all those gaps covered. I'm just going to mix up a little bit more colour, super speedy. A little bit more yellow in there. And carry on down. Now when you come towards the bottom of your stag, I just want him, he's just going to fade in at the bottom or fade out. Just get this background on. Now you have some different options for your background. You could have some fun with salt like we used the other week. I think we used salt in one of my free classes. We certainly used it in one of my paid for. Now I want that background a little bit darker here and there. I want it splodgy, like there's trees in the background, just a bit abstracted. So I'm just taking some more colour over the back and just popping it in certain places. Just let that brush dance around on the paper. Not too specific. Right, I've run out of paint again, so I'm going to stop there. So we have our background. You can see all those greens playing around. Actually, I change my mind all the time, guys. You get used to this if you watch me regularly. I'm just going to add a bit of stronger colour again, wet into wet, here and there, and just let that paint do its own thing. Just coming up close, neatening up my edges. I just want some more suggestion of trees and bushes behind our chap. So I really am just bouncing around that page, deciding where I want those stronger colours to be. So keeping it quite abstract, coming in behind those horns a bit darker. It's starting to dry out now, so I'm just tidying up, slowing down. So I've not looked up at the screen for a while because I'm just concentrating on my stag. Okay, so we have that lovely muted background. Now if you wanted to, you could bring some highlights into that as well, which is why I said have your tissue. I could move my test paper. Ah, sorry, hun. Sorry. There we go. There he is. Can you see him? Okay, so get a bit of tissue, screw it up, and you could just lift out, just tap in, and let that paper soak up some of the paint. And again, create some lighter areas. So you can use tissue for that, or you can use your brush. So have a clean brush, I'll do it down here, and just twiddle it across the paper, and your brush, as long as it's clean and damp, it will pick up pigment and wipe that off. Look how much paint has been lifted from doing that. So it gives us that, again, adding some mottly look. Up to you, tissue, you could use a natural sponge, create some different effects, just tap down. I meant to get a sponge out actually, but I forgot. I'm just coming up to the edge here before I move on. Okay, so that's our background. I want to come right up to that tape, so when I take my tape off, I get a nice crisp line. I'm just going to wipe any runoffs off the tape. There we go. Let me just move him. I want to keep him in shot for you, our stag. Right, I now need to grab the hairdryer. So if you don't like noise, stick your fingers in your ears or go on mute, because I need to dry this background off. Here we go. Okay, so that's the easy bit done, and now we are going to get on with our stag himself. Now remember, with watercolours you should work from light to dark, so we're going to put in our lighter colours first, and then we're going to supplement that, and we're going to do a mixture of working a bit wet in wet but with some control. Okay, so it's really wet into damp, if I'm totally honest, which I should always be. So in my well, just clean that out, and we'll mix up some more colour. I want to start just with yellow ochre, so I'm not mixing it. I'm just adding some water to my mixing well. I'm going to test that colour down. That's fine. A little bit more water. And I want to bring in anywhere in the back of him where the sunlight's hitting his bottom. Okay, so we're coming in with our yellow ochre, and I want you to bring that all over his back end. Again, I'm going to make this a bit darker for the camera, so a bit richer. Coming around his rear end. Now I do want a spot of sunlight hitting his back, so I'm going to lift out using just a damp brush, clean it off, just have it damp, use it like a sponge. I want a hint of that colour. So I'm very croaky today, I've done a lot of talking. Just lifting some of that yellow ochre out, reducing the intensity of the colour. You will still end up with a stain on the page. There we go. And I'm going to bring this all the way down and just let it end where that background green was. And now we're going to bring some of his beautiful auburn colours into that area. I'm going to do this bit wet into wet, but I don't want my paint too wet. So I'm coming with a wet brush directly from the pan this time, so the paint's creamier. Hello everyone, free to paint today. Yes, every Wednesday is free to paint day. Okay, so I'm going to pop some of this sienna, burnt sienna, in, wet brush, just picking up that pigment, and just bringing some of these warm autumnal ochres and siennas in to my stag. Just moving that paint around with the tip of my brush. I'm just lifting a little bit out again where it's gone too far, so you can, people say to me, oh, I don't like watercolour, I can't control it. You can control it, just takes practice. So I've just added a bit more colour around his haunch and around where his leg is sort of extending from, his shoulder there. So his shoulder's going to sit forward. We've got a bit of light in between here. I'm going to leave that to dry off a little bit, and then we're going to add some more detail over the top. But when we add the detail over the top, we need this to have dried back. Not totally dry, but I just need that water to start seeping in, so you've just got a slight glow. And if I chat long enough, we'll reach that point very quickly. Okay. Let's go on to his neck. So with my light yellow ochre again to start, I'm going to be coming in around the left hand side, coming under his neck, and we're going to meet back up the other side. Just pulling that down again over the greens at the bottom. What I'm doing now is just reactivating the paint in the background because I don't want any hard lines at the bottom of my stag. I want him just to bleed away. So I'm just wetting that background, giving the brush a little, just oscillating. Is that what I'm doing? Activating the paint so it melts as the stag disappears. It just melts away. I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre up onto his face. Round his cheeks. Keeping it quite light. Okay, where else do we want that to come? I'm going to come down from the side of his face, just coming along his neck with that lighter yellow ochre, and down the side of his face here. Just popping some colour on where I'm looking in that reference photo that I need it. Now this is drying back nicely, but it's not dry yet, thankfully. So I'm going to go back to my burnt sienna. I'm not mixing it with water, just using the water on the brush. I'm going to come down his neck here with this ruffle, a bit creamier, wet on to dry. So we're starting with wet on to dry, but where it meets the yellow, that's still damp. So I'm just using the tip of my brush to pull some flicks of hair, make it look hair-like and a bit rugged, pulling it over that yellow, creating his beautiful look. There we go. Because I've used the paint much creamier, the paint colour is naturally darker, okay? Because this is drying back, it's bleeding a little bit, but it's standing strong on its own, and that's what we want to happen. So let's try that over the other side. I really am croaky today. Excuse me, I need to drink this tea. So coming in here, the other side, right up onto the tip of my brush, guys. I'm just using the very tip of the brush. So I'm coming down around this ruffle, around his neck. Where's our person from Scotland? I bet you get to, depends whereabouts you are, whether you've actually seen one of these beasts in the wild. I've seen one around here. I live in Northamptonshire, and in the woods near Corby, when out walking the dogs, we have seen some deer, and once we saw a stag, and he was just standing in the undergrowth, and something just caught our eye, or my daughter's eye, and we spotted him standing there, and then off he went. Just as fast as we saw him, he was gone. Beautiful, beautiful beasts. So we're getting that framework now. You may be worried that this looks a bit dark, but watercolours dry back lighter, okay? So just bear with it, just stick with it. Okay, I'm going to bring some of this sienna down the middle from his chin, his chinny chin chin, and come down. And this time, we're not doing an ultra realism today, guys, but we do want to get that texture of his fur. So I'm just using the tip of my brush to pull these marks off out to the side, to the left and to the right, and I'm putting this sienna in as a base coat, and we're going to put some stronger colours over the top. We're going to darken it down, but I want to still be able to see some areas of this beautiful rich colour. So my marks, can you see there? Let me bring that a bit closer up. Are creating like hair-like shapes. They will melt away a little bit. Just pop that back down. Okay, now his back end is nearly dry. I'm going to zoom the camera in a bit closer for you. Just bear with me. I want you to be able to see these marks. Oops, too close. There we go, that's better. So you can see those little marks, those flicks showing in this ruffle coming down the middle of his neck. Now into his bottom, I'm going to return to his bottom. I'm going to start off just with quite a dry brush and a little bit of burnt sienna. And I'm just going to bring some texture, dry brushing almost, over the top of the painting. In fact, that back area has dried, so I'm just wet on to dry again, hardly any water on my brush. Just bringing some textural marks into that back side. Look how far, I've not reloaded my brush, look how far that paint has gone. And it's gone a little bit heavy there, so I'm just going to lift some out. Remember, with watercolour we can lift out. I'm just taking a clean damp brush through that area just to lift a little bit of that colour out. There we go. So just to give him a bit of texture in that hind section. Now his ruffle's starting to dry, so we're up against it all the time. We need to mix up this dark colour, okay, the real darks in our stag. So to do that is my favourite combination of all time. To make dark greys, to make dark browns, it's just two colours that you need. Just two colours, that's ultramarine blue. And I'm going to use burnt sienna, a brown basically. You need brown and blue. And just depends how much of each you have, is whether you get a grey colour or a dark brown. So let's go mix that up. I'm going to take my ultramarine blue. It doesn't matter whether you use tube paints or pans, really doesn't matter. I've got both here just to show you it works exactly the same. And adding some brown into my blue. Now if I leave it at that stage, we've got a lovely indigo blue. So you can use this mixture to darken, to make darker blues. A bit more brown. Just practice mixing your colours. And here we go, there's a beautiful rich dark brown. That's the colour I want. Just hope I don't run out. So up onto the tip of my brush again. If you want to, go down to your smaller size 6 brush. And I'm just stroking in some of the hairs I see in this picture down the side of my gorgeous stag, and he's really dark look around that face, so coming around the edge of his face, and again just flick that paint outwards coming down towards you to create some hints that it's hair that you're painting and not just a straight line. Right up onto the tip of your brush, flicking away, creating that texture. I'm going to come under that chin. I want to be careful not to lose his chin completely. I'm going to darken that even further. And just flick in this lovely rich dark brown. Basically I've created a burnt umber. So you can use burnt umber to mix with your blue and you'll go even darker quicker than I am with these colours, but I didn't get any burnt umber out today. Okay, just mix it nice and creamy now. It's getting creamier, the consistency of your paint. We want darker colours, stronger colours, so you need less water. Creating that lovely area of rich colour. I'm also going to bring a few flecks of this at the back end, just a few in his rear end. Carrying on, I want to add some of this around the edge of his ruffle, around this lovely scraggy neck, right up onto that tip of your brush. Pull through. Now I don't want this to be too controlled, so I'm just wetting that down a little bit. add in a bit of clean water over the top, just to let those marks melt in. So I don't want it too controlled now. So that's his body pretty much done, other than making this beard darker. So we're just going to add more blue to our creamy paint. You could use Payne's grey as well, which is pretty much what we're mixing here. There we go, darker still. So I'm coming under that chin, going to tap that in there and then pull down. Just add in another layer over the top, wherever you want that darker saturation. Going to come round his face again, darken it even further. There we go. He's starting to come to life, and I'm just going to add a bit more sienna down that corner. Okay, onwards and upwards, as they say. Is everyone still with me? Excellent. So we're going to come up his face. We already started adding a bit of colour to his cheeks. I'm not going to do much more to that area at this stage. I'm going back to my yellow ochre. I'm going to pop my glasses on because we're getting smaller, so I need to see what I'm doing. I'm going to bring this yellow ochre all around the top of his head, just giving him an undercoat. Come down that nose. Going to leave some white of the paper above his eye, around his sort of eyebrow area on the right hand side, and under his eye I want to leave some white of the paper showing. So that's going to be our highlight. Coming right up to the base of the horns there with your yellow ochre. I'm going to add a little bit more, and I'm going to bring some of this into his ears. I put quite a strong colour on there, so I'm just going to pull that out, bring that over the ears. Again, I want to leave some highlights in there. Watercolour Wednesdays, what fun. Okay, so we've got some hints of colour going on, and now just like before, we're going to build over the top of that, and I'm going to go wet into wet with my sienna, my lovely autumnal sienna, along the top of his head. Notice that I only ever use the tip of the brush for these areas, just titivating and moving that paint around. So he's got a bit of a hairstyle going on here. Now I'm going to bring a little bit down the sides. Just wet onto wet, let that paint just mutate and move and play around, and coming into the ears. You don't want your paint too wet, don't want a big puddle. Just pick up a bit of paint with a wet brush. I'm going to add some of this colour, sienna, into the middle of the ears. Allowing some of that yellow to show through. And now I want some grey. So I've already got this dark colour mixed up. I don't really want to mess that up. I want a lighter grey. So I'm going to take my ultramarine blue. If you've got Payne's grey, you can use your Payne's grey. We're just going to mix it. So ultramarine blue and our brown again. But this time a slightly different combination. Whoops. Having a disaster. There we go. So we end up with this silvery grey colour. It's amazing the range of colours that you can get just from two colours. That's the colour I want. Just a bit lighter. I'm going to bring that up this nose. Place that around his nose. See these grey colours, I'm letting it bleed into the colours underneath as well. think I'm going to pop some of this grey in his ears. A little bit of grey here and there in his ears. And around his nose. Now, you could argue that his nose is white. I think it's a really light colour. So I'm just adding a hint, adding some more water around that nose, just to give it a hint of colour. And his bottom chin. There we go. There's quite a lot to do today, so stay with it. Hello everyone. Okay, so my darker colours now. I'm waiting for this just to start drying off, and whilst that's happening I'm just going to tidy up around the edge of his face with this dark brown that we mixed up. I'm going to bring a little bit of shadow under that side of his jaw. A bit darker. When you want your paint really dark, just tap that brush on and let the paint sit there on the surface, and it will give you a lovely rich colour. Okay, back into the top of his head. A little bit more brown in my dark mix, creating this area of tuftiness on the top of his head. Wet into damp. So we've waited a little while for that paper to start drying back. Shaping out the top of his head now and coming down the side where his ears sit. There we go. And along the edge of his nose. I'm just tapping in with my dark brown. The tip of the brush just touch down, lift off, coming up towards the eyes. If his face is too wet, stop. You need to wait for that paper, the paint to start soaking in. So some of your marks will stay. The paint is more controllable when that paper starts drying back. And just add in a few more bits of texture to the face. There he comes. He won't come alive until we give him eyes and a nose. So let's do that next. Now this time I want you to be really strong with your paint. I'm going to move to a smaller brush, to my size 6, and I want you to go from your blue to your brown, whichever brown you're using, to your blue, to your brown, to your blue, straight onto the pan, so your paint is as creamy as it can be, and test that colour out. I always end on the blue when I'm looking for a blacky colour. So brown, blue, brown, blue. End on the blue. Test it first. A little bit more blue. And then we can come in carefully, shaping that nose. It's basically a set of 4 triangles. So coming across the top, into the sides, to the nostrils, and down. And to the other side, there's another triangle. You see these triangle shapes? And suddenly your moo, your stag even, is going to start taking shape. And then underneath, there's another diamond shape coming down to his lip and out to the side. Just take your time, be careful around here. Down to his bottom lip, and then we can give some shadow. I'm being careful because this is wet and I'm going to lean into it. So sorry if my head's coming into shot as I get over the page. Come under his mouth and up the other side. I'm going to come under that chin, add some hairs to his chin, and up the other side. So suddenly he starts looking like the stag we want him to look like. I'm going to add a little bit more blue over the top, because that's looking just a bit too brown for what I wanted. So I'm just going to mix that up darker by popping some dark blue over the top, ultramarine blue. There we go. We have his nose. I'm going to let that dry, and we're going to do the same thing with his eyes. Now be careful, guys, with the eyes. We need to leave that glint in the eye. I just realised I picked up green, brown, blue. You can use black if you prefer. This is just how I prefer to work. If you want to use black, go ahead and use your black. Okay, right up onto the tip of the brush. I could do with a smaller one actually. Look at that shape, how the eye comes down and around, and then creep up and leave that glint in the eye. Let me just move my tea out of the way. Just going to turn my board slightly. Come into the other eye. Leave that little glint in the eye. Whoops, nearly smudged it. Tiny details. There we go. So now we're starting to get somewhere, aren't we? We can see him coming together. I'm going to just tidy up around his face, add some darker colours here, just pulling it up and fading it up the face so his nose really sticks out, stands out, up the side of his face again, the other side, right on the tip of my little brush, just playing with these dark colours, adding some texture and some shadow to the sides of his face. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow ochre, take him a little bit stronger. There we are. Just moving those two colours around. Just using that tip of the brush to titivate and move them about. Okay, his nose is still wet. I do want to put some more colour into his nose, but we'll hold off until the nostrils are dry. So let's go on to his ears and finish them. Then we can do the piece de la resistance. We can go up and enjoy doing his wonderful antlers. Just darkening under that chin again before I move on. Okay, into his ears then, rich dark colour again, blue-brown. And I want to really emphasise those lovely dark tips of his ears. Here we go. Just the tip of your smallest brush, tapping down, right up onto the tip. Looking for those darks in the reference photo. Around the edge of his ears. Once you have that dark colour around the edge of his ears, go back into that colour whilst it's wet and flick it, pull it downwards. So you don't end up with this solid line. You're breaking it up, you're dipping into that paint and spreading it inwards, both sides. Just pull in, dip into that paint and just spread it in. My one looks a bit like a baby. Okay, and in the dark section of his ears, in the middle, that fluffy area in the middle, I'm going to go again, a little bit more brown this time, into that centre of the ear. just take your brush either side. Fabulous. A little bit more yellow ochre, and one ear is done. Whilst we're doing these really dark colours, I'm just going to come down and start shaping the side of his face, where his face meets his ear, coming across, around by the eye, comes back in, narrows down that face, and then comes out into his shoulders. So that's going to really make his face pop. Again, what I want to do in places is pull from that line. There we go, just pulling in from that line, so now he looks more chiseled. His nose is still wet, can you believe it? Still wet. I'm going to take some lovely rich dark colours again into his head, just dropping in, bouncing around on the tip of the brush, a few darker zones at the top here in his hair. Now we're going to come down the other side and do the same thing with the ear. Get your dark mixed up, brown and blue. I do need to turn my board around because there's a lot of wet paint still, so hopefully this is still in shot for you. Come round the edge of the ear with this dark tip. Nice and creamy paint, guys. You don't want it washy and weak. Coming into the side there. Got his other ear in, and I'm going to do the same thing again here and there. I'm going to work back into that paint and just pull it inwards to the ear. And into the centre of his ear, again, creating that fluffy area in the middle. There we go. Turning back around. Now there's things that I would want to go on and tidy up in my painting once I've completed the main part, and you can do the same. Just be careful not to overwork things. I'm just looking where else I need some shadows now before we do the antlers. And his nose is taking an age to dry, but I'm going to add some light grey around the bottom of his muzzle. And if it bleeds, it bleeds. And the same into his chin. Just very light colour down into his chin. And a hint, just a hint of burnt sienna at the top. Now be careful, I've got a little run there because his nose is still wet. There we go. And now I'm going to darken, just seeing things that need tweaking before we do the antlers. I'm just going to take my Payne's grey and come in behind that nose. Just darken that grey so his nose pops forward. And at the side, just want to darken that edge so his nose really comes forward. Now I do need to wait for the rest of that nose to dry, but what I want to do is bring some light grey into this cross section that we've ended up in the middle of his nose. Okay, so antler time. I'm just going to dry him off so we can really get to grips with those antlers. Dry him off. That's better. Just before we go up to the antlers now, I can just pop in that little bit of colour that I wanted between those nostrils. I didn't like the glaring white paper. Okay, up to his antlers. Where's he gone? Here he is. We're going to take a light grey to begin with over those antlers. Same colour combination as before. Blue. I want my bigger brush. Blue. And my sienna to create a grey. So a bit more on the blue bias to get your grey colour. Touch more blue. Always test it, guys. You can always test it down on your paper first. That's the colour I want, but I'm going to use it with a little bit more water to make it lighter. And we're going to paint this over the antlers, leaving some white paper for the tips. And at the side of this antler here, I need to leave some white because there's a highlight on that antler. So I'm going to leave that. And I'm going to come down to the base. He's got lots going on in these horns. It's really hard to keep track. I'm bringing that grey in, but leaving a white edge for a highlight. And here we go again. There's some lovely bluey grey colours in those antlers. I'm just going to check the screen to see if anyone's asked any questions that I've not seen. Are you all just concentrating? I think you're all just concentrating. Okay. I'm just going to mix up a bit more colour. Brown, blue, to get my grey. A bit more blue. And come in the other side. Now the greys pretty much show more on the tips of the antlers. A little bit more water. And here we go. On the other side. Look for where those highlights are. And leave the white of the paper to show through. So coming onto these horns that are crossing over the middle. The edges are in highlights. I'm coming onto the tip of my brush, coming around that edge. Leave the highlight clean. Into that horn. Concentrating. I go quiet too when I'm concentrating, so I get it. Okay, now I'm going to bring some yellow ochre in. Let me clean this section out. This is longer than I thought today. I thought we'd have this done in an hour. Maybe. Okay, some yellow ochre. I want the paint semi-creamy, not too watered down. I'm going to bring some of these yellow tones in. Just where I see in that reference photo some warmer colours. Slightly too strong there. There we are. There's not a lot required, just here and there. Bringing that yellow over the grey, and now we can start adding some richer colours, bringing our burnt sienna in. I've just popped it in with the yellow there and popping this. You can see a lot of these gingery colours in this horn. Really look at that reference photo, keep your eye on the prize. Into that horn as it joins the head. And on this side, remember, try and keep the white of the paper in places. particularly on this side, on the left of the edges of the horns. And I want some of this coming up, the tips of the antlers. Beautiful range of colours just in this one area. There we go. We'll continue on this side. We'll get this side done and then we'll go back to the other side. So coming up that horn, coming from the top of his head, and putting some strong colour on, and then just stretching that out, pulling it out towards the tip of the ear. So using the colour that I've put on the page, and then pulling it, which is a technique in watercolour, pulling the colour, extending it up the horn. I want to take my grey a bit stronger up here, the tips of his antlers, these fat bits at the top. Just taking that grey, another layer, applying it a bit, just tapping it on and letting it sit and moving about. We are wet and wet here, so the paint is going to bleed and do its thing. We're just adding it and letting it go. Getting those darker colours up this top section. Now into those horns. For speed, I'm going to go into my Payne's grey. That's what we've been mixing so far with our brown and blue. I'm going to come into the bottom dark areas of these antlers, right on the tip of my brush, and this is where they're really going to start. You want your paint nice and creamy. I've come straight from the pan, guys, for this, so it's nice and rich and strong. There we go. There is a slight gap of light between one and the other, if you can see in that photo. Just here, you want a sliver of light between that back horn and the front one. We're going to come round. I think he should end up on one of my bone china mugs. He's gorgeous. I don't have a stag or a deer in my collection at the moment, so what do you think? He should join. Oh, Patsy, you're back to work now. Get your paints out later. Okay, now these horns are crossing over again at the back here, so I'm just going to come in behind that horn. Strong colour, Payne's grey. So the tip of the one in front shows through. Move down to a smaller brush, guys, if you're more comfortable. I'm just trying to come up to the point on mine. So this antler, this horn, is now going to stand out as we take the shadow darker the other side, along that fat bit here. This one's going to pop forward, we hope. Just darkening, bringing all those darks in just with my Payne's grey and coming up onto the tip. Who was it that suggested last week that we do something Christmassy? I don't know. I've got you to thank for this. And this is what I come up with. Right onto the tip. Darkening those shadows down. Now this horn at the back, it's really, I'm trying to see what's going on there. There's another line coming from here up that edge. Really is a complicated affair. There we go. Beautiful. Now what I want to do is just muddy this area up because I don't like those straight lines. So I'm just going to use my Payne's grey and a bit of brown and just pull those together. A little bit of rich creamy paint and work it, pulling that paint, giving it a bit of texture to the horns as well. Payne's grey and a bit of that brown sienna, just dragging some of that through, getting rid of any solid lines. Just bringing a bit of textural marking to those horns. Right onto the tip of your brush and just pull through some indications of the texture. Isn't it magnificent? And I've left one out, so we'll do the one at the front. This is really going to make the one behind disappear into the background. Nice and creamy with your paint. Bring that one in. I'm going to move to my smaller brush. Even I'm chickening out now. Nice and strong. Look how that makes it so bold and beautiful. Really stand out against our muted background. Up to the tip. There's a white highlight there that I want to leave. Just pull this. There we go. Okay, remember what I've told you about colours drying back lighter. It's happening already on the horns. So I'm going to go back in with my Payne's grey and darken that down further. Revisit it once that first layer is dried to really make those darks pop out. So we're just going to repeat that process on the other side. You can stay with me for this. Who's staying? You're doing really well. Oh, Jean, thank you. I'm glad you're liking it. It's very lonely here talking to camera. It's good to get some interaction from you guys. How are your paintings going? Are you painting along? How are they going? Let me know. Post some pictures after the event. Remember, if you want to support me so I can continue bringing you these free Wednesday watercolour classes, you could book on to one of my paid classes. They're only £10. I keep all my classes at £10. But I have also advertised a beginner's watercolour 6-week course in January. So you may want to check that out as well. It's £95 for 6 weeks and we will cover everything. And rather than just take you through techniques and a whole list of techniques, we'll apply them in each lesson so it sinks in. Okay, just darkening further. There we have his other horn coming in. I go quiet every now and again, guys, when I'm doing these fiddly areas and I have to concentrate. So I'm just going to turn my board slightly. Oh, you think it should go on a mug? I think it should too. Him with my pheasant and everyone else. You're going to try after the class. Can you please post the reference photo again, as I'm struggling to find it? It's on the event, Donna. Just go to the event. It's there on the event. Okay. If you struggle, just let me know though. Okay, just add in some sienna colours now, like we did before. Picking out. I'm just trying to keep track of which horns where. That's the tricky bit. Bring in some sienna up here. I would say when I'm teaching these classes, I'm doing the live session. I am aware of time and how much time I'm taking up of yours, so I do go a bit more sketchy maybe than a totally finished piece that I would work on in my private time. So yeah, it's not as refined maybe as when I'm just painting on my own. Okay, up and around that horn with the darker colours now, brown and blue to make your lovely deep brown colour. I've turned my page round so I don't smudge, but I'm losing track of where things are, so I'm going to turn him back, make you all giddy. Just seeing where this horn, I think I've gone a little bit wrong, comes up, and then we've got the shadow behind, which hopefully is going to make sense of that one. It's like a Chinese puzzle, isn't it, guys? You love him. Oh, thank you. He's got character, hasn't he? There we go. So what was I saying? Yes, past classes as well. There are some of my past classes advertised. If you go to On Demand, I think I called it, on the tab on my website, you can look at some of my past classes. But the way I do those at the moment is going to change in the next few days, so it'll be easier for you to purchase past classes if there's some things you miss, because I record them all. All the Zoom classes are recorded, so you join live and you get to, later that same day, I email you out a link where you can watch the tutorial again. So I hold the live classes on Zoom, so you can join me on Zoom in the virtual classroom, which is fun, and I can get to see what you're working on, and we have a little chat. And you get the video too, all for £10. So good value, I'd say. So check those out. I always advertise them on Facebook. So if there's something that takes your fancy, if watercolour's your thing, there's a fabulous one coming up that was actually because a customer requested it, of a little black tuxedo cat. So we're doing a watercolour black cat in a couple of weeks, just before Christmas. What else have we got coming up? Let me think. Oh, on Thursday we've got flowers. So if you want to learn how to do a glass jar of flowers, then check out the class on Thursday. Okay, I'm just going to add a bit more Payne's grey, a bit weaker colour, to the top of these antlers here. Bit more blue. I want it a bit bluer. There we go. Adding these lovely blue tones, these cooler colours that are at the top of his antlers. Wonderful. We're nearly there, guys. So it's tweaking time. Let me just have a look and see what I want to change. This bit here by his ears looks a little bit wrong, so I'm just going to tidy up that edge of his face. That comes in a bit sharper than I've got it. There we go. And I want to darken with my Payne's grey under his mouth, around the corners of his mouth. You could also use an ink pen at this point if you wanted to. You could bring out some, do watercolour and ink. I'm now going to darken those nostrils a little bit now they're dry. And I'm going to darken even further under his chin. and then the side of his face here. There we go. Now he's looking more regal, isn't he? So I'm going to leave him and leave you guys in a moment, she says, as I carry on tweaking. I hope you've enjoyed this one. If you've got any suggestions for future Watercolour Wednesdays, let me know. I'm just going to go and add a little bit more stronger sienna around his mane here. It's dried back now. We can come back down this section. Yeah, let me know if there's something particular you'd like me to cover in our Watercolour Wednesday class, and I'll do my best to incorporate it. Check out my website, as I said, for future classes, or look on Facebook. And don't forget, I also stock all the products that I'm using, I stock. So buy local, buy from someone small rather than Amazon. And the prices are really competitive. And the last thing to mention again, I'm down to 20 of these kits now. So this is my watercolour paint book. It's got some of my fun characters in there already drawn out, and it's a good thick watercolour paper, so you can take your watercolours straight to the top, and all the characters on the cover. You can buy this on its own, or you can buy the kit. I know a lot of you have already bought some. £9.50 for the kit, which comes with some little stackable paints, a brush and a mixing palette. So check that out before the stock's gone. I won't be getting any more in this side of Christmas, so don't miss out. So last thing to do, guys, before I leave you to the rest of your Wednesday to do things other than watercolour, is the fun bit, removing the tape. Here he is. Our noble beast coming out of the mist. There we go. I've used all your products today. Oh, thanks, Eleanor. How did you find them? Thanks, Annie. Josie. Joan. You just caught the end. You'll try it later, don't worry. Remember, the videos stay on Facebook. All you have to do is go back into the events and you'll be able to see the video. It will be there. Yours needs to go on a diet. Please send me pictures, guys. I love to see them. Send them through. Post them. I'm not sure if you can post in the event. Well, you're posting now, so yeah, post in the event. Check out the website www.eunice, don't forget the J, friend.com. And I look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday, or maybe in a lesson if you're booked for tomorrow. I'll see you then. Bye everybody, have fun, enjoy your painting, see you soon. Bye, thanks CJ, bye Suzanne, see you all soon.